Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the Bellator 256 main event, the rematch between Ryan Bader and Lyoto Machida. Now I'm very interested in this tournament. I've spoken a little bit about it before, and one of the reasons is because Ryan Bader, since leaving the UFC, has become, you could say he's a very different fighter. Same in the skills that he's got, same in the method of winning fights, but different in his confidence. I think is the biggest difference. You know, he's proven himself as a champ now. Obviously, he's just lost his belt to Nemkov, who's on the other side of the tournament, which makes things very interesting for this tournament. But there are a couple of other people in this tournament that are potentially problematic for Bader. One of them being Machida, because Machida's got a win over him, from a few years ago. The other one being Rumble Johnson. Now, Machida fills you with fear because you always got the feeling that something might happen. You know, he's a sharp shooter. He's very calm. He hangs on the outside. He waits for you to make a mistake and cross his line of attack. And that's exactly what Bader did. You know, he tried to be patient in the first fight, but ended up running forward straight onto a short right hand to the chin. On the flip side, and I will get into this more when the fight's approaching, but if the fight's approaching, if they both make it through. Rumble Johnson against Bader is another interesting one because Rumble Johnson's the kind of person that could put the fear of God in you. You know that if he hits you, it's going to switch your lights off or do a lot of damage. And when you think back to Bader's first fight against Rumble Johnson, you could see that in Bader. Like, he knew that there was real danger in getting hit by Rumble Johnson. He clung onto that Kimura from Mount Bottom. You know, that just shows how aware he was of the danger of Rumble's striking. So there's a big psychological barrier here for Bader to get through. I mean, obviously Phil Davis is in the tournament as well, but I think Bader will feel confident that although that's going to be a tough test, Phil Bader's a similar kind of athlete to him. He's there to compete. Wrestling's his foundation. Rumble Johnson will punch a hole in you, and Machida will snipe you from the outside with a whole variety of techniques that Bader probably doesn't have a good handle on those skills. You know, his striking's effective. You know, I've got a couple of knockouts I want to show you in a moment, but it's quite rudimentary. It's quite basic. He's got a couple of things that work for him, but you've got to think with his understanding of striking, standing across from Machida, he's going to feel like there's things going on that he doesn't comprehend, and that makes people hesitant. So that's a big question for me, is the psychology of Ryan Bader coming into this tournament, knowing full well that in order to get the light heavyweight belt back, he's got to go through some people that are A, people that have beaten him before, B, are terrifying and have beaten him before, or C, are just very difficult fights for him. You know, Phil Davis being one of them, Nemkov obviously being the other. Let's focus on this fight specifically. So, if you're Ryan Bader, you've got a strong wrestling skill set, and the rest of your game is built on that. Your safety net is knowing that you can get the fight to the floor when you need to, and he's done this at heavyweight as well as light heavyweight. So he's not going to look at Machida, who was, a middleweight to light heavyweight. He's not going to look at Machida and think, physically, you're going to be a problem for me. Let me just get straight into this. Hang on, my paranoia is peaking. I need to check whether I'm recording. Yeah, we're all good. Okay. So, what do you expect from a Ryan Bader fight? You expect him to maul his opponent. You expect him to have well-timed takedowns, smash his opponent up against the fence, and get them into that grind cycle that we see from DC and Khabib and the like. Very good at tying wrists up, very good at just dominating people physically with good wrestling skills. You can see the wrist bind here. That's what's tying Matt Mitrione up. Here it is here, look. You can see Bader's, he's wrapped around that wrist at the same time as, so he's got the same arm as the same leg tied up. Now this, I'm going to try and explain this to make it a bit more sense. I've got another clip which might make it easier, but we'll give it a go for now. So as you can see, Ryan Bader's gone around the back of Matt Mitrione and he's controlling this wrist here. At the same time, he's in half guard top, so Ryan Bader's right knee, which is this one here, is on the floor. That is fixed to the floor because it stops Matt Mitrione's hips from turning back and forth. You can also see the base leg of Matt Mitrione, which in this case is his right leg. So his right wrist is tied up and his right leg is trapped. But in order for him to alleviate this pressure of this wrist, he needs to get clear of this arm and move over. So he's basically going down on all fours. But one thing that's stopping him is the fact that his base foot is trapped to the floor as well. So it puts this kind of cross control over his body where, you know, one shoulder's pinned up, but then you also can't move your leg as well. It's a very debilitating position. And Ryan Bader's been very good at utilizing it in heavyweight as well as light heavyweight. Now, the key in this being successful for Bader is the timing of the takedown. The thing that holds people off against Machida is not the constant work rate. It's the idea that something might catch you on the way in. So that center channel that Bader's got to transition through is really dangerous for him, and he found that out in his first fight against Machida. Chael Sonnen found out in his fight against Machida that center channel is really dangerous. So the timing of Bader's takedowns is going to be key, and something that he does very well is he times the takedown when someone's in a position where they're off balance, when they're either throwing a kick or whatever. Now, this one on Nemkov was more him stepping forward at the right time. You can see he steps to throw a punch, drops all his weight onto that lead leg. So he's throwing a jab. And Bader reads that. He dips right underneath it and wraps that lead leg up. Kind of a bit like what we were talking about with Stipe the other day with that snatch single. So as you can see now, Bader's wrapped around that leg of Nemkov. And he's just going to pull it up in this direction and remove Nemkov's base and put him down on the floor here. Rip that up, and then he drives, and you can see the other hand as well. So at this point here, he's got both hands wrapped around the leg. Once he starts to elevate that leg and feels like he's got control over it, he's going to allow his left hand to take control of that leg entirely, as you can see there. So the left hand is hooked on the back of the knee, but at the same time, his other hand comes around the back of the hip, just there. So now he's elevating this leg. He's going to catch this hip, and then he's going to use that like a double rotation. Both elements of control working together. And you can see there's like a twist on Nemkov as he goes down because Bader catches that hip, and he's pulling him in this direction. And then as he lands, Bader's straight on top of him. But like I said, the timing of these takedowns, shooting under punches or shooting into kicks, obviously if the kick is, if you catch it early enough, is going to be so much more valuable for him. Partly because, he's assured of what his opponent's doing. I mean, there's a real risk here of him closing onto that knee, as you can see against Phil Davis. But the reason that this didn't hurt him as much as it could have done is because he closed the distance quickly. I often use this example of back kicks. If someone's throwing a back kick, there's two things you can do. You can either move away from it and hope you're out of range, or you can move into it and check their hip. If you can smother the power of something, oftentimes it's more valuable than getting out of the way, because if someone's throwing a power shot, oftentimes they're going to continue traveling forward. Whereas if you can smother the first one, it stops all of their forward momentum. So as you can see here with Phil Davis, as Phil Davis throws the knee, as he skips, Bader penetrates. I mean, he's literally just a second behind there. Machida may have caught him. That's the reality of it. But he closes him down. He hits him in a position where Phil Davis has got no control, and then drives him to the floor. And obviously, Phil Davis is a good wrestler as well. So he turns and he gets on all fours. This is right at the end of the round. Bader actually attacks his neck from here. The point still stands. The timing on the takedown is what's going to keep him safe against Machida. Another good example here, this is Vassell. So beautiful level change there. And this is an even better example because as Vassell's throwing the kick, you can see, so his knees are in line, his feet are pretty much close together, and his hips are in a position where Bader's going to meet them square. It just makes the takedown so much easier. Bader's going to be able to just bowl him over, just run straight through him. He goes right round both legs, look. Wrapped in both legs. His head is so close to the hip of Vassell that there's no concern about anything catching him at that point. He's already past the danger zone there. And then as he heads to the floor, bang, lets go of the legs and goes wrap to wrist. And then he's on that back hip again. Look, there we go. We see it again. So it's take the base away, control the hips, cover the body with body weight and with control. This is a good way for him to get this fight to the floor and really make Machida work for the first couple of rounds. I mean, if Bader's winning the fight, this is how he's doing it, in my opinion. The last thing he wants to do is to kind of hang around on the outside and just be slowly picked at by Machida, because it may, first of all, maybe a very boring fight. It may be a very frustrating fight as well for him, given the fact that he already did that once with Machida and that didn't work out well for him. He's got to do something different this time around. And I feel like Bader's confidence is in a new place after moving over to Bellator and picking up both the belts. I think this tournament kind of turns that on its head, given the fact that there's some guys in this tournament that are problematic for him, and the first psychological hurdle for him is Machida. It's this sharpshooter that doesn't want to engage. It's a very difficult person to really fight in a lot of ways, because he's an old school guy. He's an old school martial artist, is Machida. He'll hang back and he'll wait. He'll see his right opportunity and he'll take it. But if it doesn't come, he doesn't force these opportunities. And that puts the onus on his opponent to then go and take the fight from him. And I don't think Machida is going to be any different at this stage of his career. I mean, what is he? He's coming off 2 close losses. The Musasi one was a very cagey performance, but same thing with Phil Davis. Another strong wrestler. He can hang back and he can force people to wait and make a fight very stagnant. So the person that beats Machida is the one that takes the fight to him. Another good example I'll use for you is when he fought Yoel Romero. So Romero basically decided he was going to kickbox with him for like a round and a half, I think it was, maybe 2 rounds. And then as soon as he decided he was going to put his foot on the gas, he had Machida on the floor and had stopped him with elbows in seconds. Ryan Bader's got the wrestling skills, he's got the power double, and he's got the imposing top game to cause a lot of problems for Machida once he's in this position. Weighing heavy on him, as you can see here. Look, again, he's tying up this wrist. He's got that crossbody control again, so he's controlling the right wrist, but also the right leg. He's caught in half guard, and then he's bearing all of his body weight down as well. I mean, this, you've got to bear in mind this is a 5-round fight as well, so there's a possibility of Bader utilizing his conditioning as a weapon in this fight. Wearing Machida down, tying his wrist up, beating him up. And of course, this is the safest position for Bader, because although Machida has got ground skills, Bader's almost definitely got the wrestling to just nullify it. And look, watch this, for example, as well. This is a nice... I notice these things, especially when it comes to the bigger guys, and especially when it comes to fights over 5 rounds, because this, it requires efficiency if you're going to do this consistently. This is a good example of how Bader utilizes his body weight instead of his strength. So you can see here, Vassell's managed to clear this wrist, so that this wrist has been cleared of this hand, which is what was tying it up initially. So, let's see. So there we go. So he's got control there. Bader's going to open up with a few shots, and that's going to allow Vassell to clear that wrist, clear that hand. So Bader's going to clamp onto it with the opposite wrist, and he's going to pin that to the floor where it is. Now that is pinned to that mark on the floor. Instead of Bader pulling this wrist towards him to collapse Vassell down, which would be strength on strength. I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but it's not an efficient way of solving that problem. So he pins this to the floor. Watch this. Then he's going to drive his body weight into his opponent. Oh, that's not the right thing to do. 1 second. There we go. So he's going to keep that wrist pinned to the floor. Keep an eye on the wrist, and then watch how he moves his body weight into his opponent. So that wrist stays right there where it is, and he flattens his opponent onto it. The use of body weight instead of strength is key in all grappling arts. And then he's on top of him. And then from this position again, heavy chest, shoulder pressure, grabs the wrist, ties it up again, puts him in that same cycle. Now he's got to break that wrist control again. And now Bader's opened up to start throwing a few strikes. And a short, quick burst here from a guy who's, heavyweight, light heavyweight, that's got a wrist controlled. Most referees are going to jump in there and save that fighter from taking these unnecessary shots, because Vassell's trapped here. I mean, he's not intelligently defending himself. Part of the reason for that is because he can't. So this wrist is controlled by Bader But this, from the Mitrione fight, as I was saying, you can also see. So this is the right leg of Vassell. This is the left leg of Vassell. In order to alleviate the pressure on this wrist, Vassell needs to continue moving his body over so he's on all fours. It's the only option aside from breaking the grip to alleviate that control. But as you can see here, Ryan Bader's got his knee on the floor on the canvas in between again. So this is driving straight to the canvas right there, which is stopping Vassell lifting this knee over. So I want you to think about the right knee. No, it's the left knee of Vassell. It's here behind Bader's leg. He needs to lift that and move it over to this side in order to get to all fours. But Bader's leg being pinned to the floor is stopping him doing that. So he's kind of got him in it's like a cross bind. It's a very uncomfortable position, and all he's got to cover his head is this one arm, which obviously Bader can work around with his punches, especially given the fact that he's bearing over his opponent. He's got control. He's got gravity on his side. This for Bader is all day he could do this to Machida if he can get him into this position. So the challenge is that transition between standing and on the ground. And that's where Machida's so good, because he's a sharpshooter, because he's good at picking people off as they come in. Obviously, this is a great example against Chael Sonnen. And now Chael knew that the longer he stands on the outside with Machida, the more difficult it's going to be to wear him down. And this is a 3-round fight as well. You've got to bear that in mind. So Chael's not thinking, I've got an extra 10 minutes to wear him down and to beat him up with pace. So he has to get started pretty quickly. And now Machida shows good takedown defense early on. Still shows that patience that he's known for, will take his time. But he knew that Chael Sonnen wanted to close him down. So Machida now is trying to find things that will keep Chael off. Footwork being one of them. But Bader's not going to walk forward like this. He's just not that kind of fighter. Sonnen's confident in his chin. He's a little reckless anyway. Sometimes I think he's in there more for the fight than the victory, and I think that helps Machida find his opportunities. But this still is it's a hell of a pace from Chael Sonnen to start with. Puts Machida in a defensive position straight away, which he might find himself in here against Bader. But he does all the right thing. He's fighting the hands. Chael Sonnen's got a really strong body lock here, but you'll see Machida, he'll work his way back. He'll get the underhook on the far side. Hang on a minute, that's important. So this underhook here is important. Underhooks generally for takedown defense or for any kind of scrambling are important. And Machida, although he's not offensive in this range necessarily, particularly with any striking or counter grappling, his defensive grappling is good enough to certainly slow the fight down. And if Machida can do this to Bader, if he can create a space and turn himself off the fence and find space, if he does that 2 or 3 times in the first round, now Bader's coming to the realization that he might have to stand and strike with Machida. Then he regresses into that 2016 match where Machida was able to pick him off on the way in. Something that Machida used really well against Chael Sonnen were kicks. Now he's thrown 2 here. He throws 2 body kicks. This one gets through, cracks Sonnen right on the side of the ribs and hurts him, which first of all is good for Machida in the long run. Second of all, it's good for Machida because now he's further encouraging Chael Sonnen to close the distance down. And then we're going to see the same thing here again. We're going to see another body kick be thrown. But you can see now, Sonnen's fire blanket in this. Sonnen's trying to smother this best he can. I mean, that's a terrible defense, bringing that lead leg up and then see how he drops his hand on the far side here. Now, if you're Machida watching this back, you see that opportunity. If Machida's able to sting Ryan Bader in the body with a few shots and start making him tentative, like he's not exactly sure where he's going to block, that's when the striking skills of Machida show through. That's when you see the sharp shooting karate skills find their way through the guard. Most likely it's going to be a hand though. I mean, Machida's got kicks, but he's not quite as dynamic as another karateka like, say, Wonder Boy. One thing that's worth mentioning is, people hear the word karate and they go, oh, that's a style. But karate's broken down into so many different styles. You've got, various different styles. But if you take 2, for example, you take Shotokan and Kyokushinkai, they're very different styles of karate. And then you take two people that represent karate and MMA, Machida being an obvious one, Wonderboy being another. Now Machida stands square with his hips back. It's very much like a countering style of karate where he's hanging back and it's a snap right hand when his opponent comes in. On the other side of the karate spectrum, you've got someone like Wonderboy who stands long and side on and uses a lot more of his kicks. He uses his hands to set up his legs. So the style of Machida's karate is important to keep in mind as well. And although he can open Bader up with kicks, the most likely thing is it's going to be a punch that's going to catch him on the way in. Now, obviously, I'm going to contradict myself here because we're going to watch the rest of this Chael Sonnen finish through. Now, that jumping knee was absolute gold, and it just goes to show that center channel is really a really dangerous place, especially when you make assumptions. So Chael's been hit twice with a body shot here, so now he's making an assumption that kick's coming again. And as you can see, as Machida starts to jump, I mean, it couldn't be more obvious than what you're doing there, but you can see Chael's tucked into the side. He's expecting this body kick to come around, so he's expecting to catch it and smother it and finish the takedown. But in this instance, Machida switches it and comes straight up the center with a flying knee. So again, if you're Bader and you're working on taking him down, you can't always assume that he's going to do something. If you pressure him to a point where you're close enough to him, then there's less risk in level changing and smothering a kick because you're going to meet it earlier. Chael Sonnen was just too far out here, and obviously he thought that body kick was going to come, which is why he's dipping to the side and his arms here to meet it. Look, I think he was expecting to catch it, loop it, and then finish the takedown. But coming straight up the center line with that knee, it's just going to remind Bader that he's got to be really smart about how he covers distance. And again, start the next round. Same thing again. Chael drops and he goes straight onto a knee. Lovely timing by Machida. It's going to be one of the main weapons he's going to be able to use in this fight, even if it's the memory of the shots that he landed against Chael Sonnen, which will make Bader hesitant in level changing straight down the center. Now, if you're Machida, you come in and you're expecting Bader to try and clinch you at some point. It's the most logical thing for him to do. Machida wants this fight on the feet. He wants to fight at distance, at range. He wants to be able to pick him off and find his opportunities as Bader's trying to close range down and get his hands on him. For Machida, it's all about managing the space between them and seeing if he can spot the regular movement patterns of Bader so he can intercept him with a shot on the way in. For Bader, it's about getting around those intercepting shots and getting his hands on his opponent. But there is an alternative approach for him, and he does have power in his hands. One of the reasons that this punch was opened up and the next one against Mo Lawal, one of the reasons is because his opponents are expecting a level change. I'm just going to show you this. Now notice this. Bader's going to throw a long left hook out here, and it's just going to miss. But what Fedor's going to do, and I'm only noticing this because I'm assuming what Fedor is expecting from Bader. He's not expecting Bader to stand and trade punches. He's expecting Bader to level change and put him on his back. So as this punch comes in, Fedor knows he's out of the way of this punch, but he also moves this lead leg as well. He moves this back to get it out of the way in case Ryan Bader is level changing. You can just tell by his posture he's not exactly sure. Once he's clear of the punch, his next priority is getting out of the way of the level change. So in my head right now, if I'm Fedor, I'm expecting Ryan Bader to level change. I'm expecting him to try and put this fight on the floor. So when this punch comes around the side, part of the reason why it lands is because it starts off looking like a takedown. Wait for it. Little jab. But then this punch comes with a level change. There. And it catches Fedor in a really awkward position because as Bader level changes here, watch Fedor's lead hand. Watch what he does with this lead hand. This will signify what he's expecting. Because he's also noting that Bader's head is coming down to this side. So it takes away the threat of this right hand. That's not going to come over the top unless his head's going down to the opposite side. So he doesn't have to worry about this punch. And this is a a subconscious reading from Fedor. He's been doing this for so long that he can see these things in the moment, as a lot of fighters can, especially veteran heavyweights. You get used to seeing the body movements that insinuate the next shot that's coming. Okay, so as this plays out, as Ryan Bader drops here, you can see Fedor drops this lead hand because he's expecting to have to fire this in as an underhook to stop a takedown from Bader. And because Bader's head has level changed, Fedor doesn't see the left hook coming over the top. And it just pings him right in the nose. But look at the position of Bader. Most people, if they see that in front of them, would be expecting a level change. They would be expecting to be defending a takedown. And Bader's definitely got power in his hands. There's no doubt about it. I think a part of the reason why he doesn't have a lot of knockout shots is because he doesn't have the confidence to throw as if he's going to knock him out. Same thing again here with Mo Lawal. I don't think he was expecting to knock him out with that, but same posturing happens. Watch Bader's position. He drops. Mo Lawal's level changing now. He's going to try and search with a counter left hook, but he gets caught with one in the process. Look how deep Bader steps as well. His foot goes from here all the way through to between the feet of Mo Lawal. If you're a wrestler, immediately that makes you feel vulnerable because he's so close to your hips now that it wouldn't take him much to lock your legs up and drive through you, especially the size difference in this fight. So again, the reaction is to the level change of Bader. The hand goes down as if it's searching for something lower down and not a left hook to the head. So the point I'm trying to make is if Bader can mix in, if Bader can land a couple of takedowns, for example, let's think about this. If Bader comes out and lands a couple of takedowns, now Machida's thinking, okay, if he's level changing, he's going to look to take me down. And then he starts throwing those shots around the sides. It not only masks his other takedown attempts when he decides to throw them in the future, but it also opens the guard up for Machida, who's not sure exactly whether to expect a punch or a takedown or whatever it is. Even the threat of it, the question in Machida's mind of, do I move back to get out of the way of everything? Do I get ready to defend a takedown? Do I stand my ground and try and counter? All of these questions, the more of those questions Bader can put in Machida's mind, the less Machida can focus on his setups and his techniques that will finish the fight. So Bader comes into this fight with wrestling. He comes in with strength. He comes in with size. He comes in with a pace which Machida probably doesn't want to be fighting at. How old is Machida now? Into his 40s? 42. Machida wants a technical karate match. He wants someone that's going to stand there and throw the occasional shot so Machida can counter him and show how beautiful his traditional karate is. Bader's got to take that away from him. He has to pressure him, he has to bully him, he has to wear him out. He has to close those ranges down so Machida's constantly having to worry about finding space before he can manipulate and use the space against Bader. And by Bader coming in as just a wrestler, it makes that a lot easier for Machida. Bader coming in as a wrestler with a good left hook, and you're not exactly sure which one he's going to throw, that makes him double trouble. Machida, it just gives additional things for Machida to think about. And once Bader's in this position, it's almost entirely defensive for Machida. I don't see him. Well, let me just have a quick look. Let me just correct myself if I'm wrong. 2 submissions on Machida's record. Let me see if I can find. Because the thing is, I don't think about Machida and think submissions. When I do, I think of the one that John Jones caught him with, that guillotine where he dropped him against the fence. And Bader's got a hell of a squeeze on him. If he gets clamped on Machida's neck, he could quite easily take him out, especially if he's already fatigued Machida by putting a pace on him. Okay, so arm triangle in 2007 was the last time Machida won by submission, and that was against Soccerju, UFC 79. Jeez, it was a long time ago. Like he's not known for his submissions, and I don't think that's going to be something that Bader's going to have in mind when he's facing him. So putting Machida on his back, he's going to put him in a defensive position, and he's going to try and scramble back to his feet, which allows Bader to put him into that cycle of, weighing heavy on his back, tying up his wrist, trapping one of his legs in half guard, and just basically being a pain on the floor. So if you're Machida, then you've got to expect a wrestling. Oh, here we go. So if you're Machida, you've got to expect wrestling offensive. You've got to expect Bader to be hesitant if you can put that idea in his mind that something's going to sting him on the way in. But Bader can work around this by overcoming the doubts in himself when it comes to someone who's a sharpshooter like Machida, working his way into range, getting his hands on his opponent and just wearing him down, grinding him into the canvas. Everything that Machida wants in this fight is determined by space, and Bader can take that away from him if he has the confidence to transition through that danger zone. And the reality is the danger zone is A, getting your head off the center line, not moving in straight lines, getting close to him as possible so when you do shoot a takedown, even if there is something coming in your direction, you can smother it, which again takes confidence. But if you're a wrestler and you're fighting someone who wants to stay in the striking range, the more gradual you transition through that range, the more dangerous it is. I'll give you more homework. Go and watch Khabib against Edson Barbosa. Same thing. Now, Khabib was practically running him down because he didn't want to stand on the outside and get kicked up by Edson Barbosa. So he goes, in Khabib's head, he goes, right, I'm going to close distance once around and I'm going to do it aggressively and I'm going to completely shut down any kicking opportunity that he's got. Bader kind of needs to do the same thing, but it's a different kind of fight because when Khabib was fighting Barbosa, he was dealing with kicks, which are easy to smother if you close range down fairly quickly. For Machida, he's got kicks, but he's also got those flying knees up the center line, and he's got wicked snapping counter punches. So there are three different ranges that Bader's got to work through. He doesn't want to be standing kicking range. If he gets past kicking range, then he's moving into the counter punching range, which is what he paid for in the first fight. And if he's level changing from a distance, there's also the risk of the knee to the face as well. So several things for Bader to think about closing distance, which means that if you do it once per round, it's going to make life far less risky for you. Now, I'm just going to quick touch on the last fight because I want you to have in mind the reason why this didn't work out for Bader, and this is the shot here. So look at the position of Bader's head here. This is the counter hand. So the channel in which Bader's traveling through is a straight line. He's coming straight towards Machida, which means Machida knows that at some point Bader is going to cross this line with his head. This line is basically the distance, the direction that Bader's head's going to travel. So what Machida's going to do is he's going to use his timing and his awareness to wait until he's in the right spot. Wait till he's in the right spot, and then he's going to fire that right hand straight across that path, predicting the trajectory of Bader's head and catching him on the way in. Here we go. As he moves in, watch how Machida, he jogs back to create a bit of space for himself and then plants his back foot and punches across the center line. Bang. Now, he knows that that's going to land because Bader's moving in a straight line all the way through the movement from right over here all the way onto the punch. And the other thing as well, I didn't notice the first time I watched this, but Machida's outside block to counter punch actually keeps him safe from this overhand. Nice little traditional karate shout out there. It's an outside block. There we go. You can see it better from this angle. He just manages to catch Bader's fist with it as he's on the way in. And it stifles the power of Bader at the same time. Stifles the power of the punch at the same time utilizing the speed at which Bader's moving forward to catch him with the right hand. There's definitely something to be said for these traditional styles, but the reason that we love MMA is because we see the limitations of it as well. And there are definitely limitations to Machida's game, which Bader can exploit if he's brave enough and smart enough and has the right game plan. At the same time, Bader's psychology has always been the question for me, and Machida's already got a win over him. If he gets through Machida, he's moving towards Nemkov and Rumble Johnson, which again puts a weight on him psychologically, which I'm interested to see whether he can overcome. What haven't I talked about? I think that's pretty clear, to be honest. I mean, it's an interesting fight because they're both veterans in their game, but it's a clear fight because you kind of know exactly what to expect from both guys. They're both later in their career, veterans. They're established in their game. Bader has improved, but I think the improvements have been more based on the psychology of him being a successful champ, and maintaining that strength of psychology going into these fights is going to be an interesting challenge for him. I think he's got the physicality to win the tournament. I think there are people in this tournament that undermine his psychology. And I think Machida, although obviously he's into his 40s now, the discipline and training and preparation that he's had throughout his whole life is still going to make him a very, very formidable opponent. Very snapping counter punches, good setups, good management of range and distance, all things that he's going to have to rely on and put into place in order to beat Bader. But I'm loving this tournament, and I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. I'll be bringing them for each one of these fights coming up in this tournament, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. All right, enjoy the fights. I'll see you next time.